I recently delivered the kickoff to a virtual ICMI conference on the state of contact centers. The format's rapid fire Q&A. What are the most pressing questions contact center leaders are asking today? What's happening with AI and workforce and turnover and the future? So with ICMI's permission and encouragement, I'm posting an excerpt of it for you here. I hope you find it helpful, and thanks so much for watching.
Welcome. You're with Brad Cleveland, bringing vision and clarity to customer experience, customer service, and contact centers.
Now, today I want to focus on something very simple, separating the signal from the noise. The headlines are screaming lots of messages, but what's actually happening? And what do we need to be paying attention to right now? And let me begin with a quick recap of a few trends that we've been watching closely over the past couple of years. First, one that surprised a lot of researchers and practitioners is that Gen Z is calling. Yeah, they start out in self-service or chat, but when something gets complicated, they'll often quickly move to voice. And it's a good reminder to us that customers don't think in terms of channels. They think in terms of getting help easily. Second, AI is changing the nature of the work we handle. The work reaching our employees is becoming more complex, more strategic, and more human. And third, upskilling has become a major priority. Agents increasingly need a blend of skills and communication and judgment and digital fluency, the ability to work effectively along AI tools. So these developments will continue to shape the environment. And with that backdrop, let's jump into the questions. And I'll get right to the number one question that we get most often these days. Is AI leading to a reduction in agents? The short answer is no. Not yet anyway, and maybe not anytime soon. And stick with me on this one. According to ICMI research, the state of the contact center in 2026, 58% of leaders predict AI integration will result in staff reductions. 39% of you expect staffing levels to remain about the same. But what's playing out on the ground looks different from what many are predicting. In recent keynotes with broad cross-sections of contact center leaders, I've been asking from the stage a simple question. By show of hands, is your workload going up, staying about the same, or going down? And the overwhelming majority indicate, often with chuckles and head nods, that their workloads are increasing. These are audiences of hundreds of leaders across, about every vertical industry. So it's a pretty good, statistically speaking, it's a pretty good sample. A follow-up question we sometimes get then is, well, how long will contact centers remain the exception to the broader job market? But the broader job market actually, the data there points to a similar theme. Despite alarming headlines of this or that company laying off employees, a recent active track study of 164,000 workers found that AI is often increasing the speed, density, and complexity of the work rather than reducing it. And this is based on analysis of more than 443 million hours of work across over 1,000 organizations. So a very robust sample. So question number two, and a related question we get is, if 6 out of 10 contact center leaders are predicting staff reductions, why aren't they happening? Why aren't we seeing that happen? And, what we're seeing instead is that workloads are often expanding for a number of reasons. And here are some of those main reasons. Of course, not all of them apply everywhere, but even if one or two are at work in an organization, they can have a big impact. And first is unmet demand. In many cases, customers couldn't get through easily before some of these AI implementations. And as organizations improve access and service, that suppressed demand begins to surface. Then there's product and service complexity, connected devices and customized financial services and changes in the insurance space and the healthcare sector. And, you get the gist. Third, more channels. Phone, text, email, chat, messaging apps, social media, video. As any experienced contact center leader will tell you, and many of you are with us, adding channels rarely replaces old ones. It just adds to the mix. Then there's the self-service paradox. The more complex problems land with, the more easy the interactions that land with automation, the more complex those issues land with human agents. And then security and fraud. Scams are becoming more sophisticated, often using AI, and verifying identity and resolving disputes often requires some pretty experienced people. And then business change, new products, subscription models, mergers, CX initiatives, all these kinds of things generate new questions from customers. So while AI is creating efficiencies, these forces are expanding the scope and complexity of our work. Which brings us to the next question. Where is AI actually producing the most benefit right now? Research from Metrigy indicates that the top 3 use cases delivering value are interaction analytics, WIM capabilities as in workforce engagement management tools like forecasting, scheduling, quality monitoring and coaching, and agent assist capabilities. Beyond those areas, we're seeing rapid growth in AI text agents, voice AI, automated summaries, quality monitoring, translation, forecasting, workforce analytics, and proactive customer outreach. Interaction analytics, though, are a game changer, and AI can now analyze thousands, even millions of customer conversations and surface patterns that used to take months to find. Supervisors are using this information to identify coaching opportunities. Product teams are using it to uncover product issues. Sales leaders are using it to understand what closes deals, and executives overall are using insights to guide improvements across the business. And in many organizations, the contact center is becoming the most powerful listening post in the enterprise. About 48% of companies are already using interaction analytics. Another 37% plan to add it. Where it's a priority, and it's all a matter of how we use these tools, where it's a priority, we're seeing substantial value. And that brings us to another important question. How do we prepare leaders for the complexity AI is introducing into contact centers, and really the opportunity that it's bringing? AI is creating some gaps, or at least it's exposing some gaps. For example, in the ICMI State of the Contact Center 2026 research, again, many leaders say that one of their biggest challenges is turning the data and metrics into actionable insights across the organization. These are loops they didn't have in place, and some things that need to be improved there. A majority support developing new metrics to evaluate things like customer effort and AI-assisted interactions. So in other words, the technology is advancing quickly, but leadership systems and things like measurement, government, and operational planning are still catching up. And that's why this moment is so important for leaders. AI doesn't just automate work. It raises the bar for how contact centers are managed. It requires clearer strategy, stronger data discipline, and better alignment across the organization, which means the real competitive advantage in the years ahead won't just be technology, of course, it'll be leadership. I recently caught up with Bianca Price, who's HR Customer Experience Manager at Michigan State University. And later today, she'll be discussing how to develop leaders quickly. But here's an excerpt from our conversation, and I love her advice on one-on-ones.
Of course, there's always be status updates, right? But it's to get into a development focus more and treating those sessions as really coaching sessions. And to your point, I know coaching that work can scare a lot of leaders, but coaching is different for everybody. And coaching doesn't have to be what it is for me or you, or it is for someone else. So treating things as coaching sessions. So instead of asking, what did you do this week? Ask questions like, what are you learning? How do you feel stretched? What kind of work do you want more exposure to? Who needs to see the work that you're doing? Really having conversations. Is there anything that you see that we can do better, that we can update, that we can change? What do you want to take ownership of as a person on this team? What do you see that's an inefficient process? What is frustrating, right? And to be able to have those honest conversations and I talk about this a lot in my articles, but I really do utilize Clifton Strengths for this. So if I have a strategic analytical employee, they're going to want to update things. They're going to have a different perspective, but then I have a different employee who may be focused on relationship building, and they want to try to make, processes, improve processes for a more relationship standpoint. And both of those are valuable.
Yeah.
And really, these one-on-one conversations help employees reflect on growth and help leaders guide development more intentionally.
Yeah, great list. So question 5, how do we develop our agents for the AI-enabled contact center? This is a theme you'll hear throughout today's event, but let me highlight 3 things to focus on. First, prepare your agents for more complex work. As AI handles routine interactions and simple inquiries and lookups and basic troubleshooting, the interactions that reach human agents tend to require more judgment, more context, and more empathy. AI isn't eliminating the role of our human agents, it's elevating it. Second, teach agents how to work with AI. AI is increasingly acting like a powerful real-time assistant, pulling knowledge, suggesting responses, summarizing interactions, and helping agents navigate complex systems faster. That means agents need to know how to prompt the tools, how to interpret AI suggestions, apply judgment, stay in control of the interaction, those sorts of things. It takes some training, it takes some practice. And third, double down on human skills. Talking about communication, empathy, and problem solving, which are becoming even more important. Because as the routine work disappears, what's left are those moments that really matter to our customers. The job is becoming more digital, but also more human. Question 6, what's happening with turnover out there, and how do we make improvements? We've got to hang on to our best agents. Turnover is still a killer in too many contact centers. And interestingly, most leaders believe they're making real progress on retention, but the data suggests a more complicated story. Here are a few numbers from the ICMI 2026 research. So 42%, 4 out of 10 contact centers report annual turnover of above 50%. It's way too high, way too many. About 80% of leaders say their organizations are getting better at addressing the root causes of turnover, yet only 30% rate their training programs as strong or excellent. That's, of course, a key component in retention. So clearly there's a gap between what many organizations believe is improving and what the outcomes suggest. There's another dynamic to consider here. The contact center environment today is highly bifurcated. Some organizations are struggling with extremely high turnover. Others, and probably many of you, don't have turnover rates that are that problematic. Many of you probably have turnover below 10%, and some of you in the low single digits. So when you look at organizations getting the best results, some patterns stand out. They invest heavily in training and coaching. They create clear career pathways. They give their teams better tools, including AI, to remove friction from the work. Technology helps, but leadership and culture are what really move things in the right direction. Question 7, how do we get the budget and executive support that we need? Here's a simple, powerful way to think about the contact center's value. And some of you have heard this before. We've used this model for some time. Contact centers can create value on 3 levels. There's efficiency, customer loyalty, and strategic value. And of course, we want all 3, but our encouragement is to focus especially on that 3rd level, strategic value. In other words, what value can the contact center deliver to the rest of the organization? And the business outcomes that come out of that, the biggies, growth, revenue, and profitability, market share, brand reputation. Ultimately, that comes down to what we focus on as leaders and how we communicate the potential of the contact center. One of the top use cases delivering value, as we discussed earlier, is interaction analytics. And again, about 48% of companies are using interaction analytics. Another about 4 out of 10, 37%, about 4 out of 10 plan to add it in the near future. But even if you already have it, an important question is, are you using it to its full potential?
What we're finding is that American companies are using AI to try and do response as opposed to doing detailed analysis of why are we getting these contacts. In Japan, it's almost exactly the opposite, but in Japan also we have found they're being proactive. They're analyzing the operations data to see that you had a transaction failure and then reaching out to you. And so the attitude toward AI in Japan versus the United States are almost opposite. In the United States, people are getting really worried about it, and it's got a bad reputation, and bad things happen. As opposed to in Japan, people are looking at it as a positive tool that's going to make their life easier because there can be more proactive service.
Yeah, and really, like every technology that's come along, from the internet to mobile phones, it comes down to how we use it, which is why we encourage leaders to focus on that third level of value, strategic value. Question 8, are contact centers becoming more or less important to organizations? It's a fair question. Like, what's our role going forward? Are we going to be as important as we have been? For many years, contact centers were viewed, at least in many organizations, as cost centers, but that perception is rapidly changing. According to ICMI's recent research, 74% of leaders say their organization now treats the contact center as a top business priority. And it's easy to see why. Every day, your teams hear what customers are experiencing, their frustrations and product issues and emerging needs and new opportunities. In many ways, the contact center sits closer to the customer than any other part of the organization. And with AI and analytics helping surface patterns across all these interactions, those insights are becoming more visible and more valuable than ever. So the role of the contact center is evolving, not just as a place that resolves problems, but as a place that helps organizations really understand their customers and their products and services and how to strengthen the organization. It's powerful research and development. And that puts contact center leaders, you and me, in a more strategic position than ever before. Question 9, what metrics matter the most? How do we gauge progress? It's a question we get all the time. This too will be a subject that surfaces in a number of sessions today. But let me just make some brief comments on this. Efficiency still matters, but leaders are increasingly asking deeper questions about the outcomes we create. Resolution quality. Not just first contact resolution, but did we truly solve the customer's problem and dig in and prevent it from happening to other customers going forward? Effort reduction. Did we make the experience easy? And emotional sentiment. How did we make the customer feel? Oh, so important. Metrics are becoming more about improving the business. And question 10, what will separate the best contact centers over the next 5 years? Technology will certainly play a role. We believe this answer comes down to embracing change, though, and how well leaders guide the transformation that we're in the midst of, and that's going to continue. Leaders who invest in developing their people, who are rethinking measurement and strategy, who use AI not just to automate tasks, but to better understand customers and improve the business. The contact centers that succeed in the years ahead will have strong leadership and a clear strategy and teams prepared for the changing nature of work. And that's why the role each of you plays has never been more important. I recently saw the AI-enabled remake of The Wizard of Oz at the Sphere in Las Vegas. The original film is from 1939. Hard to believe. Now, spoiler alert, if you plan to go, during the tornado, the seats shake, leaves drop. Later, as Dorothy picks apples from a tree in Oz, apples literally fall into the audience from somewhere up there. Light, spongy apples, no harm done. But with the help of AI, this 85-year-old movie has been transformed into an immersive experience, fueling ticket sales and travel and, dinners before and after, this entire economic impact. We're in a time of profound change. I was just kind of thinking about that as I watched this movie, and I mentioned that experience simply to say our contact centers will be what we make of them. They'll become what we can envision and what we dare to help put in place. The experts have predicted doom and gloom with every tech disruption. Factory robotics and the internet and now AI would create this massive unemployment, new economic challenges. But each wave also created entirely new products and services and industries that few people could see at the time. Our contact centers have extraordinary visibility into our products and our services and our customers and emerging trends. We're on the front lines. We've got a front row seat to all this. And I've never been more excited about the opportunities we have to create value and make a difference.
If you enjoy this kind of content, please click subscribe on whatever platform you're watching or listening. And thanks so much for joining me.